What kind of flowers do you never give on Valentine's Day? Cauliflowers. What did one octopus say to the other octopus? Can I hold your hand, 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 hand? Oh, why did the banana go out with the prune? Because it couldn't get a date. I know. Okay, and one last one. This one's a little longer. This is a story. A woman runs into her friend at the mall and they sit down to catch up. And the woman said to her friend, "You're not going to believe this. I was cleaning out the attic and I found an old lamp. So I, just for fun, rubbed it. And can you believe it? Out of the lamp came a genie." "Oh my goodness," said the friend. "Did the genie give you 3 wishes?" "Well," the woman said, "the genie explained that genies don't really do 3 wishes anymore, but he did give me a choice between one of 2 wishes. He said I could either have the perfect memory with total recall for the rest of my life, or he could turn my husband into the greatest lover ever." "Well," the friend said, "that is a really tough choice. Which one did you choose?" And the woman sighed and said, "That's the thing. I can't remember." All right. I tried. We got a few laughs. All right. So before we get into the chapter on mind, I want to read you a little something. This is from a children's book, and I'm going to tell you why I'm reading it in a moment. But it's from a children's book called When God Made You. All right, so listen to this. You, when God made you. God made you all shiny and new. An incredible you, a you all your own. A you unlike anyone else ever known. An exclusive design, one God refined. You're a perfectly crafted one of a kind. Because when God made you, somehow God knew that the world needed someone exactly like you. You, God thinks about you. God was thinking of you long before your debut. From the very beginning, amid history and time, you, little one, never left God's mind. You, when God dreams about you, God dreams about all that in you will be true. That you, God's you, will be hopeful and kind. A giver who lives with all heart, soul, and mind. A dreamer who dreams in big and small themes. One who keeps dreaming in journeys upstream. A mover, a shaker, a lover of nature. A builder of bridges, you, the peacemaker. A you who views others as sisters and brothers and lives by 3 words, love one another. A confident you, strong and brave, true, too. You being you is God's dream come true. Because when God made you, all of heaven was beaming. Over you, God was smiling and already dreaming. Isn't that nice? My favorite line in that is, you being you is God's dream coming true, because that's very science-mindy to think that God thought of us and thought, the world needs Donald, poof, and created a Donald, and Donald is God on the God manifestation on earth, and true of every one of them. Yes, but here's the reason I'm telling you the story. We had a customer who came into our bookstore and said to me, this was a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago, and said to me, I need a book as a gift, and I would like it to have these kinds of principles, but I don't want it to like hit over the head. So do you have something like that? And I said, I have the perfect book. And I read some of the book, to this customer. The customer said, "That's perfect, that's wonderful. What is that book?" And just like Brian did, I held up the book. And the customer looked at it and said, "Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not buying this. The child I'm buying it for isn't Black." And there was a moment, and we happened to have some books on our shelf that were from Louise Hay and Wayne Dyer that all had white kids on the front. And I said, "Do you think that Black kids would learn from those books?" And she said, "Yes, those are great. That would be great for all kids." And I said, "Well, this would be great for all kids." And it was that moment, and I could see that she was bumping up. She's not a bad person, but I could see that she was bumping up against her entitlement, her thing that Caucasians have, which is what's good for me should be good for everyone, but I don't have to partake in what is yours. It's a divide, we're divided that way. And that has stuck in me, just that story. She ended up buying the Louise Hay book, but I could tell it planted a seed in her mind. And I just, as I said, never forgot it. So I know that Reverend Michelle was wanting to give simple practices every week of how we can bridge that divide, how we can go beyond. And this is Black History Month. I mean, obviously, I think we should be thinking about this and practicing it and talking about it all year round. On the other hand, I'm glad that we have a month where we can concentrate on it. And so I have a simple practice for all of us. And it's a fun practice, and but it'll open us up. And that is this: go to a bookstore. You can go to a Barnes and Noble. You can go to Amazon if you want. You can go to your independent bookstore. Maplewood has a great one called Word Bookstore. Whatever, go to the bookstore and browse around and pick up a book you normally wouldn't pick up, because when you look at it, you would think, "Oh, that's not for me." Pick it up and then take it home and then read it. Or if you have a book club, pick a book, introduce a book to the book club that would be not for us, and do it. And, it doesn't have to be President Obama's latest book, which is awesome, or Michelle Obama's book, Becoming, which is also just incredible. Or it doesn't have to be a heavy, dark, deep book. You can pick up like a classic, like a James Baldwin book. This is fabulous, Giovanni's Room. Or if you haven't read this, I encourage you to read this. Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Or a contemporary book. Here's a great novel. It's in my to-read pile, called Washington Black. I hear it's fantastic. Or a children's book. Whatever, just do it and read it and learn and bridge the divide. What a fun, simple practice that will also heal and enlarge our minds and bring us all closer together. If we make the effort and keep making the effort, it eventually becomes effortless for all of us to love each other. So that's my simple practice for today. Now, we are here to talk about Chapter 2 in The Science of Mind. Oh, and if other people have suggestions of bookstores or books to read, I'm noticing that Purple put there's a Black bookstore in downtown Newark called Source of Knowledge. That's awesome. I would love to go there. Take Raffi. Let's give each other some good suggestions. But now we're going to go turn into the study of the science of mind. And I'm going to pick up right where Reverend Michelle left off. And that means we're going to study Chapter 2, which is mind. Now, a lot of you know me, and you know already that I am kind of a science of mind nerd. And I thought it might be interesting for you to see some of the copies. This is not all of them, but these are just some of the copies of the book, The Science of Mind, that I have. There were 2 editions in 1926, and then he revised it in 1938, which is the one that we mainly study. But here's a 1926 edition of The Science of Mind. And then I have some others, but I just brought down very quickly, Raffi and I brought down, here's a beautiful old leather-bound copy of The Science of Mind. And The Science Mind itself has had many different covers over the years. Here's one cover. Here's another cover. Yet another cover. Here's one from the 50s. But the current edition kind of looks like it as well. Here's this one. And I even have different leather-bound editions. I have, I think, every edition of the Science of Mind, a copy of every edition of the Science of Mind there is. That's how big of a Science of Mind nerd I am. But as many editions as I have, I always go back to the very first copy that I bought, which is this. And my copy, if you were to go through it, it's highlighted, it's marked up, it's underlined, I've written things in the margins, and it's falling apart. But for some reason, this is the one that I always want to read. I always intend that I'm going to pick up a new copy and start all fresh, and I end up going back to this one. And when I was watching Reverend Michelle's talk last week, I was following along, and I noticed that she was talking about the parts in chapter 1 that I had not highlighted. And I thought that's so interesting. That's what's so great about this year-long study of it, that I'm going to talk about the Science of Mind, Reverend Michelle, Tony. You're going to get different perspectives about the Science of Mind. And one of my favorite things that I highlighted from the chapter that you guys studied last week, I don't know if you can see this. I love it so much that I yellow highlighted it, I outlined it, and then every time I read it, I used a different highlighter. And the line is, the divine mind is never confused. Well, I'll tell you, every time I feel confused, I think of that, and I think if I just elevate my mind to the divine mind, there's no confusion. The divine mind is never confused. So here we are going into chapter 2. Now, what I'm going to do quickly is I'm going to tell you what the chapter says in very easy terms, and then I'm going to tell you why it's important and how to use it. And the first thing I want to do is I want to put this chapter into perspective. So when Raffi was doing homework once and he was kind of stuck in his textbook, I said, here's, what is the main point of this chapter? And he goes, I don't know. And I said, okay, here's what we do. There's a very simple tool that all books have, nonfiction books have, that will help you. And that's called a table of contents. And the first thing that you do is you look at the table of contents, because the author is going to tell you at the beginning the supposition of the book, and at the end, everything that you're supposed to have learned from the book. But in the middle, you get to see in the table of contents kind of the arc that the author is going to take you on, the adventure of this book. And when we do that, what we discover is that what we're doing right now is we're in part 1, which is called the nature of being. And underneath that, in very small letters right here, it says what we believe about God and man. Now, yes, this was published in 1938 when they used male pronouns for everything, which many languages do. They default to male pronouns. We don't have to do that in our discussion of it, though. And then chapter 1 in this part about the nature of being was in the beginning God. So last week was really a chapter that says God is and God is everything. If you want to boil it down to 2 sentences, that's what last week was. It's more than that, but in a nutshell. And then if we look at this, then he explains the different parts of what that means. And that's so helpful to see. The very first thing after saying that God is and God is everything, he goes right to a chapter on mind. Now, so this chapter is what mind is, okay? And one of the first things he says in this chapter is mind with a capital M is another name for God. He has lots of names for God: Spirit, the one mind, cause, all these with capital letters. But mind is another name for the all that there is. And then he tries to get scientific and logic about it, because he knows that a lot of the people coming to this book and this philosophy are coming from other philosophies or from no philosophy. So he wants to make the case. And he says, no one has seen mind, but we have proof of mind because we think. You can't think without the thinking apparatus, which is mind. I think, therefore I am. So he's proven, and he goes into greater detail, of course, in the chapter. I'm just trying to nutshell it for all of us. The proof that we have of mind is that we think. And he says, the thing is this thinking apparatus called mind is in me, is in you, and is in God, because we are all in mind. There's one thing, and it's mind. There's just mind, and we live and move in it. So there's mind. The next thing he wants you to know in this chapter is that mind has two aspects to it: conscious mind and subconscious mind. So he says in this chapter that conscious mind, capital C, capital M, is spirit, or God, or the thing that is in all of us. Mind has conscious mind, which is spirit, and unconscious mind, or subconscious mind, which is how conscious mind creates. Now, when we look at the book, and what I told Rafi to do was to look at the table of contents to get help, but the other thing you do is you look in the back of a book, and there's usually some helpful tools in the back of nonfiction textbooks. In this textbook, there are tools. There's a whole section of maps. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there's a whole section of maps to help explain what he just says in the previous 4,000 pages here. And you can see on the first map, which is called Metaphysical Chart Number 1, which is, it doesn't have a page number, Metaphysical Chart Number 1, that he puts mind right up here, and he puts subconscious mind right here. Mind, subconscious mind, conscious mind, subconscious mind. And then there's a third part, which is the effect that the mind using the subconscious mind creates. And our symbol has a big V in it, and the V, that's the symbol of science of mind. The V is there to show the movement of all things. Everything begins in mind. Just like that wonderful children's book we just read, God dreamed, and the thought went into the subconscious and made the creation. Okay? The other thing that's in the back of a book is a glossary. The Science of Mind has a huge glossary. So if you ever get stuck on anything, go back to the glossary, because I have found that he makes things more simple in the glossary than he does sometimes in the chapters. And then finally, there's an index, which is more like a concordance than it is an actual index in this particular book. So we have lots of tools to help us understand what mind is. There is only mind. It's divided into conscious mind and subconscious mind. The conscious mind plants the seed, the subconscious mind receives it, so therefore conscious mind is active, subconscious mind is passive. Yang, yin, okay? Next, so we've got this one mind that's both conscious and subconscious, and Ernest Holmes tells us that the subconscious mind is impersonal. That's the word he uses, impersonal. I can remember when I first read this book many years ago, that when I saw the word impersonal, I was turned off by that because it sounded cold. But then I grew to love the fact that it was impersonal, because I thought, oh, if the subconscious mind is impersonal and is passive, then that means that anything I put into it can be a possibility, which means the mess that I had made of my life using using this tool of conscious mind and subconscious mind in a negative way, since the subconscious is impersonal, it would immediately turn around and help me. I didn't, there was no retribution period. I could begin using it in a different way immediately. And then Ernest Holmes in this chapter tells us how to use it. He says that mind itself is energy. It is pure potential. It is the potential of everything. Anything and everything that has existed or will exist, or currently does exist, exists in this thing called mind. And we can activate this thing called mind using our thoughts. Our mind connects with the all mind through thought to create. And that, which is also, again, represented in the chart, seed, soil, plant, conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the effect, cause, effect, is what he calls the Trinity. That's what he calls it in this chapter, the Trinity. Seed, soil, plant, conscious mind, subconscious mind, and the effect. That is the Trinity. Now, that's the chapter in a nutshell. You can explore it and read it and chew it and really get into how he argues the points to make that happen, but that's what he says. But now I want to tell you, why is this important? What is important about this? Because these are big concepts about all there is and mind. And again, when I first read this was a language that I had to get used to. It has its own language to it. It wasn't just that it was an older language. He created his own language to describe what he wanted to say. So why is it important? Well, it's important because Ernest Holmes calls this chapter and this discovery of mind, that we have a mind and that this mind is connected to the one mind, and that we can use thought to create our experience, our reality. He calls that the greatest discovery of humankind. That there's a power everywhere. We connect through our mind, thought, and use it to create our reality. Now, when I first came across this philosophy, it was back in probably 1988, 1989, something like that. I had never before come across something like this before. And I have to tell you, when I grasped what this chapter was saying, when I grasped it, it was revelatory. It was amazing. It didn't seem like a concept. For the first time in my life, something like this felt personal and important. And I'll tell you why. Because when the teacher was teaching this in the class that I was taking, the teacher used the simplest of examples to explain the power of this concept that there is mind. And it's the simplest example. You have all used this. But what the teacher said was, hold out your hands like this. You can do this. Hold out your hands like this. And he said, in one hand, I want you to picture that you have a knife. And in the other hand, I want you to picture you have a lemon. And he said, in your imagination, take the knife safely, your pretend knife, and cut the lemon. Put the knife down, and now you have lemon. And he said, take one half of the lemon and hold it to your mouth and bite into it. Now, for those of you who actually just did that, what happened? We're on mute, so I'll tell you what happened to me. Saliva. My mouth watered. And I got it. That this thought, there was no lemon. There was no knife. This was only thought. A thought created a tangible effect. This is the smallest example, but I got it. I got it so deeply for the first time that means that I can do that in big ways too. And for me, big ways back then was paying my monthly rent. That was the biggest thing I could think of. And if I could do that with this, wow, maybe I could use my mind to create a different experience of life. And that was the beginning of a journey that I take to this day. It's such a simple way of thinking of it, but my goodness, is it powerful. That's what this chapter is about. The power of the mind, and that there's one mind, and we get to connect with it through our thoughts and use the subconscious mind to create any reality we want. Ernest Holmes says in this chapter, he says, our mind is as much of truth as we allow to flow through and bless us. Meaning, if we only let this much mind through, that's as much of truth as we're going to allow to bless us. But what happens if we allow this much and this much and this much? When we dwell in that truth, the one mind, then we begin to see it everywhere. When I teach classes on prosperity, one of the things I like to say, and it's not original to me, it's Eric Butterworth says this in his book, Spiritual Economics. Emmett Fox says this in that wonderful little pamphlet, The Golden Key, that the answer to having more money is not more money. It's more God. It's more consciousness. Why? Because there is only God. And if we begin to understand that using the mind, if we begin to use this concept from chapter 2 in our lives, then we begin to see there is no lack. In fact, there is nothing that is lacking because everything is already available. Whatever you think you have in your life, or that whatever you think you need in your life, begin by saying over and over in your mind, I believe more in God than I believe in this. So if you are experiencing lack in some area or whatever area of your life, begin to say that. I believe more in God than I do this. And another good tool to use, using your mind and this concept from chapter 2, is to say, mind, show me where you are in my life. Open me up so I see more of my connection to mind everywhere in life. Ask the question of life and then begin to pay attention, because life will begin to show itself to you now that you're open, so that you can have that incredible experience that this simple children's book was telling us, that adventure where life becomes color and excitement and joy and passion. When I begin to believe more in possibilities and in the power of mind, and I begin using that power, then that is how I change my reality. Now, I gave you that example of many years ago of the lemon and how it changed my mind, but I still use that to this day, that idea that a thought connecting to the great mind, the one mind, can change or create a new reality. So, for example, here's just a simple way to use it, or that I used it rather. I had a Zoom meeting that was coming up. This is this past week. And I had a Zoom meeting coming up with a person who is, may I lovingly say, contentious. And this person was contentious in previous meetings, contentious by email, and, just one of, and so we had a meeting. And all signs pointed to the fact that this was going to be a contentious meeting. And I don't know about you, but I don't like that. I mean, I was dreading that particular Zoom call. I thought about using some of those fun little Snapchat, funny ears or the Darth Vader mask or something, but wouldn't work on this person. All right. So I was thinking about it and I found myself just dreading it. And I thought, wait a second. No. I believe in something more powerful than this meeting. I believe in the one mind, and I believe in the power of thought to change my reality. So before the meeting, I sat down and I used what we call positive prayer, spiritual mind treatment. And then I really concentrated on step one. And step one is when we connect to the all that there is. Using our mind, we're connecting to the all there is. I spent most of my time on that one step. And in it, I said, I know, because that is true, that there are many possibilities for this meeting. And I align myself with the highest of those possibilities. And then I said, this is not my meeting or this person's meeting. This is God's meeting. And then when I ended that, then we started the meeting and I showed up as God in action, as the one mind. I showed up in that way and I treated that meeting as if it was God's meeting. And I allowed myself to not see a contentious person. I allowed myself to see another beautiful manifestation of spirit. And it ended up being the best meeting. I mean, not just barely good meeting, but it was a fantastic, it was an incredible meeting because it was not my meeting and it was not this person's meeting, it was God's meeting. That's where we connect using our mind to the one mind for all possibilities. How simple was that? And yet how powerful and effective was that? One mind divided into conscious mind and subconscious mind. And our conscious mind uses the impersonal subconscious mind to create our reality. So if we dwell upon the vastness of God, this is what the Bible calls the utmost. I love that word. That's such a great biblical word. When we go to the utmost, we are using our thought productively to create our greatest reality, which in turn blesses the whole world. I'm going to end, but there's a great quote from, I wonder, probably many of us in this meeting have seen that old movie, Superman, the old original one with Christopher Reeves and Margot Kidder was Lois Lane. Do you guys remember that? And there is one of the characters, actually one of the bad guys, Lex Luthor, says something though that just was brilliant, this great quote. And he says, some people can read War and Peace, that thick novel. Some people can read War and Peace and come away thinking it's a simple adventure story, while others can read just the ingredients on the wrapper of chewing gum and unlock the secrets of the universe. I love that. Let's use our mind. Let's use the information in this chapter to become that person, the person who reads this chapter and unlocks the secrets of our own life. And let's take it into, I should check to see if there are any questions. I don't see any. If there are, you can certainly type those. And in the meantime, I'm going to take us into treatment, into prayer, so that we can.
Joel, I have not seen any questions pop up, so.
Okay, good. Well, maybe I explained it all well enough. So let's take it into prayer so that we can activate it. So right now we go to that one mind. We go to that place like this simple children's book where we realize that we were not only connected to the one mind, to spirit, but we were dreamed up by that spirit. We are the dream come true of spirit, which means that we have spirit inside of us. We are one with the one who dreamed us. And now we in turn dream our great reality itself. And we, like that quote I read, we take this information and we use it to unlock the secrets of our own experience. We let ourselves connect easily, effortlessly with the one mind. And we use our thoughts consciously to direct them into the subconscious mind, where they will be acted upon, Ernest Holmes says, automatically, and become our truth. So right now we activate that. We know that we are guided and directed at all times by our highest self. And we right now activate that truth, more God in our finances, more God in our relationships, more God in our health, more God in every area of our life. And as we see and experience more God, we are open to more and more possibilities. We don't have to manipulate and control. We let go of all of those things and simply allow God to be God in our lives through us and as us. So we let this truth now go into that beautiful subjective mind, into law, and let it be true right here, right now, for each and every one of us. And together we say, and so it is.
So it is.